Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Weather Sim forecast. And in today's forecast, we're going to be talking about another large storm that's going to be coming to the United States during the next few days. And this is going to bring a lot of impacts, as not only are we talking about the potential for isolated severe thunderstorms across areas of the plains back over there towards the East Coast, but once we get into the later part of this week and even into next week, this is when we're going to be watching for potentially some bigger severe weather events that could roll on through the United States with damaging winds, large hail, and even strong tornadoes. So make sure to stay tuned till the end so that way you guys know what to expect for the next 7 to 10 days. And we'll begin with what's happening right now. And you guys can see how we do have a slight risk level 2 out of 5 threat for severe thunderstorms across areas of the southern plains back up there in the Kansas. Main concern for today is going to be large hail, as we do have a large hail threat even over there towards the Carolinas, and we even got another one down there towards Louisiana and Mississippi. Tornado threat, we do have a small 2% risk for tornadoes, so an isolated tornado is not completely out of the question for today. And then it looks like wind is going to be the biggest concern, as we do have a pretty large area that could see winds between 50 to 60 miles per hour. So we will keep an eye on it closely, but I'm not seeing anything significant, at least not as of right now. So we will keep an eye on it closely, but it is something that we're not really too concerned about, like I said, as it is a pretty low threat overall. But once we get into tomorrow, this is when we are talking about maybe even a larger severe weather event, since we do have a much bigger marginal risk, and we even got that small slight risk down there in Texas. Main concern for tomorrow is going to be hail, maybe an isolated tornado or two, as we actually have a larger 2% risk for tornado tomorrow, and we also see a risk for even some damaging winds as well. So we will keep an eye on it closely. And then for day 3, we're not looking at anything too crazy, but isolated wind and hail are still looking possible once we get after tomorrow, so we will keep an eye on it very closely. Now, let's talk about what we are seeing over the next few days by looking at our energy values. You guys can see how the GFS model is really showing that CAPE just continuously surging in there, and that's why we are seeing at least a marginal level 1 out of 5 threat for severe weather each day. And you guys can see that as that CAPE surge on in, we also are talking about the potential for even a lot of moisture around. This would definitely be something to keep an eye on closely, as moisture could very well be as high as in the lower 70s. And then for wind shear, we do have some pretty strong wind shear across that area, so we are gonna need to keep an eye on that area closely, as once again we're gonna have some pretty strong wind shear, but it's not gonna be the strongest, and that's why the tornado threat seems to be a little bit on the lower side. But we will still keep an eye on it very closely, as it is gonna be concerning, and we might even be talking about even some more severe weather as we head farther out into the future, which still remains uncertain. But with all these big surges of energy right there, as you can see, confidence is actually growing quite a bit that we might see a severe weather outbreak on Monday of next week, and I think that might even continue as we get into Tuesday of next week, and then after that maybe even some more big time severe weather events happening. But for right now, our next focus is going to be the end of this week and into the beginning of next week, where we could be talking about more significant severe weather. If we also take a look at how much precipitation we'll see after all the storms that we just talked about, you're pretty much adding all the rainfall we've seen from the storms over the next few weeks, and you guys can see that over the next few weeks we are going to be talking about potentially as much as 6 inches of rainfall across some areas, which will be more isolated, but we are still looking at the potential potential for widespread flash flooding, maybe even some areas getting higher than others. So we'll keep an eye on it very closely, but right now we're not really looking at anything significant, as it is, looking to be a little bit on the lower side of things, at least compared to what we've seen over the past few weeks. It's not going to be like we see widespread amounts of around a foot. That was definitely pretty crazy when it happened a few weeks ago, but nowadays it's going to be more of an isolated to scattered flash flooding threat if we see any of that. And you guys can see that the flash flood threat looks to be on the lower side of things for today, but we are still keeping an eye on it, as we even have a marginal risk for flash flooding right around the Gulf Coast states of Louisiana. Once we get into tomorrow, we got that marginal risk for flash flooding across the Central Plains, which will be for your Wednesday. Once we get into Thursday, this is when we actually see a little higher chance for flash flooding across the Southern Plains and as well as the Central Plains, so we will keep an eye on that. And then once we get into day 4, which will be the start of the weekend, Friday into Saturday, we are looking at the potential for some flash flooding a little farther to the east. Once again, not going to be nearly as bad, but still something to keep an eye on, as some of the soils over here are very saturated, even from the foot of rainfall we've seen over the past couple of weeks or even a few weeks ago. So you guys should still be on the lookout for flash flooding if you live in the Lower Ohio Valley or even down here towards the Tennessee River Valley. You guys really need to be paying attention. And then of course we will also need to watch for even some other things to happen other than just flash flooding, but for right now, severe weather and flash flooding are looking like our biggest concerns. And then if we also take a look at our wind, we are concerned about maybe some higher wind gusts with some of these storms as they roll on through, especially across the northern United States right there, as you can see, as we will have one storm bringing widespread 50-mile-per-hour winds across the Central Plains. Tomorrow, we are talking about some pretty strong winds across the Central Plains once again, as you guys can see. And then once we get into next week is when we're talking even a greater chance for high winds, especially across the Central Plains, continuing into the Great Lakes region, maybe even the northern Ohio Valley, and then eventually heading out there towards New England. And that will be the beginning and as well as the middle of next week, which is still far out from now, but we are going to keep an eye on it closely, as it is going to be concerning. So make sure to be paying attention to the weather, and also consider subscribing to the channel, as we are going to keep you guys up to date with the latest on what we could see over the next few weeks. And like I said, it looks like our biggest concerns are going to be flooding and also severe weather, along with even a chance for some higher winds, especially across the plains and as well as the upper Midwest. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Consider subscribing to the channel, as we will continue to keep you guys up to date with the latest, and we will go live if needed. But for right now, I'm not seeing any big signs of going live at this point, since we do have some lower threats for severe weather. But I think as we get into next week, our severe weather chances will really increase quite a bit. So consider doing that, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday out there, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.